What's up, everyone? Shane Larson here with the Game Time Guru podcast. Today I'm bringing on my wife as a special guest to do our episode, and we're going to be talking about what it's like to be the wife of a sports fan, the wife of a podcaster. I'll be getting her insights as well in regards to some of her favorite games that she's been to and some of the things that we've done as travel into different sporting events. So, with that being said, this is the Game Time Guru. So,
what time is it? Game time! Boom.
This is the Game Time Guru podcast, where I interview sports figures from all over the world to help deliver a panoramic view on sports. So whether you're a former athlete, one of the crazies, or simply a casual sports fan, this is the perfect show for you as we peel back the curtains and learn from our guests every single week. I'm your host, Shane Larson, and I'm helping you see sports through a different lens.
What's up, everyone? Welcome out to another episode of the Game Time Guru podcast. My name is Shane Larson, host of the show. As most of you guys know, if you've been tuning in for the last 8 years, it's almost been a full 8 years that we've been running the podcast. It's been downloaded in 182 countries, all 50 states, and thanks in large part to everybody who's taken part, whether you've listened, whether you've joined the show, whether you've shared it. I just appreciate every single one of you. As you know, I'm trying to build out my YouTube channel, so please hit me with a follow on YouTube, trying to get that up to 1,000 subscribers. But if you're listening to it on the audio side of things, maybe consider leaving us a review, whether it's on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It really helps us out. Anyway, bringing on my wife, her name is Taylor, and excited to chat with her and bring her knowledge to the table. So Taylor, thanks for joining the show.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so like I said in the introduction, we're going to be talking about some of her favorite things, what it's like to be married to a sports fan, and some of her favorite things about sports, as well as like the best places we've traveled together. We do go quite a few places to travel to sporting events, and we have a good time doing it. So first and foremost, this weekend, the weekend of this recording, we have the Ohio State-Michigan game. What's it like being married to an Ohio State fan who has, when you have to go through big games like a Michigan game and other big ones like that?
You have to be able to give your spouse grace and know that to them, it's not just a game. I learned early on in our marriage to never tell him when something happened with his team that it was just a game. I myself, lucky for him, am also a sports fan, and I have my teams that I love, but his love for his team is like he's physically on the field with them. So you just have to know that their whole day is going to be wrapped around it, and just know that what they say and how they say it is not how they actually feel. It's just in that moment.
So for me, Ohio State, Michigan, I kind of block out a good portion of the day for that, right? A lot of stuff that I do in the morning, but then like when the game kicks off, that's a big game for me, right? And I'm just curious, and I yell at the TV, and there's other people out there whose spouses probably yell at the TV.
Yes.
Curious, what advice would you give them, if they have a spouse who gets passionate about their team? What is something you would tell them?
To say nothing. To not bother them if you don't want a snark comment made back to you. To just not say anything and just walk away. I've even at times thought of maybe taking myself and the kids out of the home completely.
She has taken herself out of the home completely.
Yeah.
They'll leave sometimes while I'm watching it. Now listen, I do recover pretty quickly from the games.
You've gotten better. You
I have
haven't
gotten better.
always
During
recovered
hard
quickly.
losses, I do recover pretty quickly. If it's a loss that I know is coming for like a full half of a quarter or got a couple of minutes left in the game, it gives me time to process it by the time everything's said and done. But if it's like a last second type of thing, I still struggle a little bit with that. So I think you do a pretty good job at allowing me to enjoy my teams who just consistently lose games. But speaking of Ohio State, though, we've gone to a couple of big games together, you and I.
Yes.
She's come along with me. She's kind of become a Buckeyes fan, even though she's an Oregon fan. But she does root for the Buckeyes if they're not playing Oregon. But we'll get to that in just a second. But out of the games that we've been to, what's been some of your favorite memories?
By far, the best one, atmosphere-wise, was the Ohio State game in Ohio when they played, was it Oklahoma? Mm-hmm. They were playing Oklahoma. That was my first big football game. And the atmosphere is not just in the stadium, but it's everything around the stadium. It's the whole town. it's the folk that live and breathe their football team, and just everyone gets into it. I remember we're walking down the strip just outside of the stadium, and every restaurant, bar you think of had flags, had music blaring. Everyone's out for the game. Whether they were going to the game or not, they were part of the game day. And just when you get inside that stadium, everyone is there for the game. They're not just there to hang out. They're there for their team. And I don't know, how many does that stadium hold?
It's a little over 100,000. Yeah. Depends on who you talk to, but
when you get that many people in a stadium, just you can feel the energy, and there's nothing like that.
Yeah, Taylor and I got to go to the Ohio State-Oklahoma game. That is the game that Baker Mayfield planted the flag in the middle of the field after Oklahoma beat them. And so we went to that game together. We also have gone to the Nebraska game. What did you think about the Nebraska fans when we went to Lincoln?
They were really nice. I don't think we had one bad interaction or even witnessed one bad thing with the fans there. And the stadium there holds a lot of traditions and just things that they do during the games. That was really cool. I think it was like the red out. It was dark, so the whole stadium turned red. I believe they played a song and they made it into a whole thing. And that was really cool. Not even being a Nebraska fan, you wanted to like cheer for them, and you just took in that moment like, this is cool. Yeah. These people like live for this.
That was a fun game. That was a really cool experience for me too. We also went to a Fiesta Bowl together. The first one I went to was with you against Clemson. Decker was just a little guy.
That was in Arizona.
It was in Arizona. I remember at that game, it was at that game that one of the Ohio State fans actually told us that we should come to the Oklahoma game the next year so that we could experience it on the big stage. So we just recently went to an Ohio State-Oregon game at Autzen Stadium. That's your team.
Yes.
What was the experience like for you there? And how did I handle the loss?
I think that you handled the loss very well. I was even worried, like, are you even upset? Because it wasn't your normal reaction to your team losing, especially to someone you know who likes the other team. But I feel like you took that probably the best. But also Ohio State doesn't lose very often, I feel like, either. So it was interesting to watch them lose live. But
what was the experience like at Autzen Stadium in Oregon? What did you feel?
I loved it. I feel like because it was my team and it was the first time actually ever seeing them in person. Every other time I've watched them growing up my whole life was always just on television. So it was just... It was cool just to be in that stadium and take it all in and see what it was like and see all their traditions that you don't get to see when a game is being broadcasted on television. They have a lot of things that they do during commercial breaks or whatever other kind of breaks that they have for TV that they do there. And it was really cool to see that and be a part of that. And we even sat next to some people who have been season ticket holders for 20-some years, and just to kind of hear the traditions out of them. And it just makes it a lot more special when people really put pride in their team at a stadium.
I was a fan of Oregon's stadium. I was a fan of their atmosphere. I was a fan of their pregame playlist on their loudspeakers. I was a fan of everything that she was saying in the end quarter, like in between quarters, all the different things that they do there, the songs they sing, everything was really, really cool. Taylor's also been with me to a couple Jazz games. She's been with me to a couple of Dallas Cowboys games. I think, one Dallas Cowboys game. Yeah. We went to Santa Clara for that, and it wasn't the experience that I wanted as far as the outcome, but I am curious. Some people would say, like, what's it like going into an NFL game? For those who have followed me, I've already given my insight on what it was like going to an NFL game, but I would like to get it from your perspective.
So outside of that Cowboys game, I have been to other NFL games in my time, and while NFL games are great and it's really fun, you're watching these amazing professional athletes perform on the field, and I've got to witness some NFL games from as close as you can get in the stands, like right on the sidelines, but the college football games, there's just more passion, there's more energy, not only from the crowd, but from the players themselves. because they're still playing for something. There's still not money involved. They're still trying to get still trying to get into the NFL, or maybe have hopes of at least getting to, have an option for playing after college. And people put so much pride, because I feel like for a college, it's more about your city, it's more about your state, where the NFL, like, this is cool. But the college is just more energy inside of a stadium, from my perspective at least.
I would agree with that too, and I think those who have followed me have heard me say something similar. 1 second. I got to check to make sure it's still recording. Okay. You've traveled with me. You've been to games. You're a sports fan yourself.
Yeah.
You just gave your insight there. Obviously, I'm a podcaster too. I've been doing it since I've known you. We've been married since 2016. We've been together since 2015, early 2015. We met in 2014. So she's been with me since the entirety of the show. What have you seen from being my spouse in regards to the podcast itself and what it's grown into up into this point in the last 8 years?
I've seen a lot of the work, obviously, that goes into creating the podcast, and the editing, and obviously recording the podcast, but also just your outreach to people, and the way over the years, and even from the beginning, the way you would set up your interviews to interview anybody. You have a way of giving it a conversation instead of just a question and answer. You're really drawing a story out of people that I feel like there are just some who just don't know how to set up a question in order to get what they need out of, whoever they're interviewing, to make it into a show that's worth like binge listening to. And just the connections that you've made and the stories you've heard have also changed you as a person, because you're able to implement, whether it's a mindset coach that has coached professional athletes, or someone who, is on ESPN interviewing all these professional athletes, the knowledge that they've been able to give to you and to the listeners, you've been able to implement into your own podcast. And it's cool to see just the growth as a podcast, but also you individually.
I didn't pay her to say that. Now, last question I have for you. I call her Tater. Tater, the last question I have for you is, what's the next game we're going to go see together? What would you like to go see together? What's in the books? What's on the books for us?
I think just a playoff game. Any of the playoff games, whether it's Oregon in a playoff game or Ohio State in a playoff game, which we've already talked about this, and I won't say on here what he's agreed and hasn't agreed.
I'm going to an Ohio State game. We'll go to an Ohio State game.
Yes. If Ohio State's in the playoffs, we'll go to an Ohio State playoff game, which, like he said, I've become an Ohio State fan, so I wouldn't be mad about that, and that would be a lot of fun. I'm just, this year, really excited because my team's been number one, and they're still winning a lot of games too, just like Ohio State.
Yeah, we'll see what happens there. So our goal is to try to make it to a college football playoff game. But yeah. With that being said, we'll wrap this one up the week of Thanksgiving. Hopefully, if you guys are watching it this week or you're watching it at a different time, hopefully you've enjoyed this. Share it with your friends and family. I hope you guys can just share this podcast out with others. Make sure to follow me on the different platforms, but specifically, like I said, if you could do it on YouTube, that would be super helpful as I continue to grow out the podcast platform there. I'd love to get to 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. But anyway, we appreciate you guys. We're thankful for all those guys who have tuned in and been on the podcast. And Tater, thanks for joining me and being willing to do this week. Appreciate you. And we'll be coming to you next week with another interview. Take care.
Guys, thanks so much for listening to another episode of my show. Now, if you could go and do me a favor, head over to iTunes, give me 5 stars, and leave me a review. It would be greatly appreciated. Thanks, guys. Appreciate your support.